It's time to get your news on. We are VK1WIA.
And I'm glad you got it on with us. It is the WIA National News for week commencing June 25, 2023. And this week, WIA Vice President Lee Moyle, VK3GK, re-ACMA's Zoom meeting. WIA Director Giles Kirby, VK5GK, re-Help Wanted. Plus much more in this edition of news from the Wireless Institute of Australia. I'm Editor Graham, VK4BB, and last week, well, credit where credit's due. Last week's WIA National News was a presentation researched and broadcast by the VK7 Centenary Committee. Peter VK7PD, Mike VK7FB, Linda VK7QP, Richard VK7ZBX and Justin VK7TW. Thanks team for a job well done.
Connecting Australian radio amateurs. The Wireless Institute of Australia and the weekly news service continues. We are VK1WIA.
This is WIA Vice President Lee Moyle, VK3GK. On Wednesday earlier this week, ACMA had pre-arranged a Zoom session with all current AMC amateur radio examination assessors. This was to inform them of the new arrangements ACMA planned to be implementing now that the AMC have officially informed ACMA that they will not be renewing the deed to continue the exam services after February 2024. ACMA proposed to initially replicate many of the current AMC exam processes, but with a couple of welcome changes which were enthusiastically received by most assessors on the information session. Proposed is that assessors will once again be able to mark the exams for the candidates at the completion of the exam, as the WIA had been doing previously to AMC. Candidates now would be informed of their results and can be provided with direct feedback on the exam results or areas that they may need attention, if they may need to resit again. Currently only one assessor is required to conduct an exam, and this will be continued. Assessor accreditation will be required along with working with children type compliance. Assessor guidelines will need to be agreed to, as assessors will have a binding contract with the ACMA, a federal organisation. Exams will be delivered electronically and results uploaded to the new exam portal, saving mailing costs and delays in results processing. Along with the ability to provide remote exams via Skype video session or similar, there is no proposal from ACMA for exams to be delivered on an online platform at this stage. Many aspects will need to be fine-tuned, such as the exam payment process, a searchable available call sign database, call sign registers, and the allocation of call signs to applicants. The subject syllabi for each licence level will be updated, and question pools were discussed to whether they would be open to the public, like many other countries have done, such as the USA, New Zealand, Canada, or whether they would be closed, such as when the WIA conducted exams a few years ago. There are pros and cons for either method. Recognition of prior learning, RPL, and reciprocal licensing were briefly discussed. It is important to process applications more efficiently and in a compliant and internationally recognised manner. ACMA mentioned that there will be a public consultation on the assessments and exam procedures around August this year. As an assessor, it would be prudent to respond to the consultation with your concerns, ideas and solutions to any problems you encounter currently as an AMC assessor. ACMA are being extremely receptive as they envisage a smooth transition from AMC to the ACMA's exam service in February 2024. You can email ACMA with your concerns at spectrumlicensingpolicy@acma.gov.au with assessor accreditation in the subject line. The WIA will also be responding to the consultation and would welcome any comments and concerns for consideration to their consultation response. Please email nationaloffice@wia.org.au. That's it for now. 7-3 from Lee, VK3GK.
This is Giles Kirby, VK5 Golf Kilo, delivering the WIA Director's Update. As you're aware, the WIA is a volunteer organisation. We value and rely upon our skilled and enthusiastic amateurs to drive continued innovation and development in a hobby we're all passionate about. This is a formal call to action. Join your fellow amateurs and become part of a close community of like-minded people by contributing towards the goals of the WIA. We're seeking expressions of interest for a range of roles within the WIA. Of note today are the following. 1. The Technical Advisory Committee. To bolster our technical committee, we're seeking subject matter experts within key areas of amateur radio activity, such as DMR, C4FM, satellite, etc. This is a technically focused role to advise the board on technical matters. We're also seeking a Technical Advisory Committee chairperson to lead this activity, a position previously held by the late John Martin, VK3KM. 2. Expressions of interest for contest manager for the Ross Hull Memorial VHF-UHF contest. Either interested amateurs or clubs are encouraged to apply for this role. 3. Expressions of interest for Youth on the Air coordinator. This leads me to thank everyone who is currently contributing in permanent or acting roles. You're noted and highly valued members of our community. Please stay warm this weekend during the VHF-UHF field day. Particularly my fellow VK5s, it's predicted to be a wet one, so do take a warm drink and stay safe. This has been Giles Kirby, VK5 Golf Kilo, Director of the WIA for the broadcast this week.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's national news service. We are VK1WIA. Now with international news, Jason, VK2LAW.
Hello. In news from Region 1, WRTC to go forward in Italy despite floods. There's some encouraging news from the flood-stricken region in Italy, where the World Radio Sport Team Championship is to be held next month. Yes, despite flood damages that have devastated Italy's Emilia-Romagna region, the World Radio Sport Team Championship will go forward in July, organisers have said. RSGB to receive UK station used by King Hussein, Juliet Yankee 1. Eddie Ham, who remembers hearing or perhaps working the call sign Juliet Yankee 1, King Hussein of Jordan, will enjoy hearing this story. The UK radio equipment once used by King Hussein of Jordan, Juliet Yankee 1, is being donated to the Radio Society of Great Britain by Her Majesty Queen Noor of Jordan. King Hussein became a silent key in 1999 at the age of 63. The RSGB said the collection will be on permanent display at the RSGB's National Radio Centre to inspire others and promote friendship and understanding across cultures. They said in a statement, His Majesty was a great ambassador for amateur radio, and whenever his official duties allowed him, his radio call sign Juliet Yankee 1 could be heard on the amateur bands. His Majesty always operated modestly, never announcing himself as King Hussein, always just Hussein from Jordan. At the last SEPT meeting during May, the SEPT has put its weight behind the development of a European common proposal that would, in effect, mandate the technical and operational guidance under development in allowing the amateur and amateur satellite service to continue to operate and avoid interference to the RNSS. The IARU is supporting the development of the ITUR recommendations to identify the technical and operational constraints that might be required by the amateur and amateur satellite services in the 23cm band. However, the IARU continues to assert that WRC-23 does not need to make any changes to the radio regulations. RSGB President John McCullough, Golf India 4 Bravo Whiskey Mike, received a warm welcome when he attended the IRTS AGM Gala dinner recently. He talked about the challenges faced by national societies and also stressed the importance of engaging young people in amateur radio through the society's work with schools and universities. To news from Region 2, lawmakers in 2 US states have reintroduced a bill to protect hams from private land use restrictions that keep them from installing antennas at home. The Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act is back for consideration on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The measure is designed to ensure that hams can get on the air, especially in instances where there is a need for emergency communications, such as in natural disasters. No votes were taken when the bill was introduced toward the end of the last session of Congress. It's being reintroduced in response to the rapid growth of private residential areas that have restrictions on the use of land. Student-run Cal Poly Amateur Radio Club at California Polytechnic State University has just hit a licensing milestone. On May 23, Kyle Wiens, now Kilo Oscar 6 Alpha Bravo Alpha, became the 2000th person to pass the amateur radio exam by CPARC since they started in 2009. Congratulations on a job well done. Amateur radio helps airshow fly high. More than 40 members of the Nashville Amateur Radio Club, Williamson County Aris, and Stones River Amateur Radio Club partnered to provide operation support leading up to and throughout the 2023 Great Tennessee Air Show. Tom Delka, Kilo 1 Kilo Yankee, Air Show Communications Coordinator, said amateur radio operators from the Middle Tennessee Emergency Amateur Radio System have been supporting the air show since the mid-1980s. Operators were able to employ multiple technologies during the event: simplex radio operations, RF mesh networking, mobile VoIP phones, IP surveillance cameras, APRS tracking, and weather monitoring and measurement. Event organisers said they expected more than 50,000 people would have attended the event. The next Great Tennessee Air Show is scheduled for 2025. And wrapping up international news from Region 3. In India, an important cyclone-prone forest is getting extra protection from radio. India's Sundarbans forest region, a heavily populated area near the Bay of Bengal, is now home to a permanent amateur radio station that can be activated during times of disaster. A civil defence volunteer, Deborah Broto Mondal, Victor Uniform 3 Foxtrot Alpha Echo, will be the main operator. He received his disaster response training through the Indian Academy of Communication and Disaster Management. For VK1 WIA National News, in Sydney, I'm Jason, VK2LAW.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1 WIA. Now, operational news with Felix, VK4 FUQ.
Hello there. A prominent radio contestant is taking a top spot in another competitive field, European football. You may not find Zahir Irebov 5B4AMM on the field of any high-profile radio sport event this year, but the former Tottenham football striker does have his eyes set on next year's European Championship as the first permanent head coach of Ukraine's team. The active radio contestant is well known throughout Europe for his career with West Ham, Tottenham and Dynamo Kiev, and he also coached in Saudi Arabian, Ukrainian and Hungarian leagues. He has recently signed a 3-year contract with Ukraine's team, keeping his eye on the European Championship qualifiers against Malta and North Macedonia. As a licensed hammer contester, he has also been heard on the air as UT5UDX, M0SDX, TA2ZF, and UTOU. Now contest-wise, June 24-25, Winter VHF UHF Field Day is on right now. The NZART Memorial Contest has been held every year since 1946 to commemorate those New Zealand amateur radio operators who lost their lives in World War II. The contest is held every year on the Saturday and Sunday of the first weekend of July. The 2023 Memorial Contest dates are the 1st and 2nd of July. IARU HF World Championship Contest takes place the second full weekend of July, beginning 1200 hours UTC Saturday and ending 1200 hours UTC Sunday, July 8 and 9. July 15. Trans-Tasman Low Band Contest. 160, 80 and 40 metres are allowed with SSB, CW and digital, RTTY or PSK. DX Window. Each year the USA celebrates its independence on the 4th of July, and with that holiday there comes the 13 Colonies special event. This year the event takes place between the 1st and 8th of July 2023. 13 special call signs will be active. 1 call sign for each original United States colony. In addition, 3 bonus stations will be active, operating from France, Great Britain and Philadelphia. Participants can submit a log sheet and a suggested donation of $5 to receive a special certificate, and working all stations is not required to receive that certificate. British Railways Amateur Radio Society. During 2023, the British Railways Amateur Radio Society have been marking 55 years since withdrawal of steam from British Railways in 1968. Special event call signs GB0LMR and the club call GX4LMR will be active throughout the year, operated by Mark, active from Preston. QSLs by the Bureau, EQSL, or direct to 2E1HQY. JESEC, SP5EAQ has informed the DX World that he is finalising preparations for a new one-man expedition to the Chatham Island as ZL7/SP5EAQ. He will arrive on October 20, 2023, staying for 2 weeks, including CQWWDX SSB entry, and will be active on 10 to 80 metres bands SSB only. For VK1WIA National News, I'm Felix, VK4FUQ Enningham.
Who listens to radio?
Clive, VK6CSW.
I am Alan, VK5, Mike Alpha Kilo.
I'm John Knox, VK4FJRK.
I'm Bruce, VK3FFF in sunny Bendigo.
This is Frank, VK2BFC.
Wireless weather now. You won't hear rumbles of thunder from active space weather, but it can still affect our day-to-day lives, and it's going to get more active over the next couple of years. The sun is in an upswing of its roughly 11-year solar cycle. The number of sunspots goes up as they migrate towards the sun's equator, and when their magnetic fields tangle, solar storms erupt. Solar storms can disturb the power grid, GPS systems, and even migratory birds. They can impact radio communications on frequencies used by we radio amateurs, aircraft over oceans, and emergency management. They can also impact satellites, astronauts, and radio communication in the polar region. So, watch out for stormy weather. Media Watch and Alpha Media's KBFF-FM is one of the first radio stations in the world to trial Futuri Media's artificial intelligence software, Radio GPT. The Portland, Oregon, USA station has integrated an AI synthetic version of its current midday host, Ashley Elise, to bring a new style of content to their listeners, according to KBFF. They've been working hard to ensure that AI Ashley is just as live, local, and a lot of fun, as engaging and entertaining as the traditional version. And I can't wait to hear both versions of Ashley in action, Salisbury said in a company press release. The artificial intelligence version of Ashley also had a message to share. I'm honoured to be at the forefront of this evolved version of radio broadcasting, said AI Ashley, quoted in the press release. As the world's first AI DJ, I will fully embrace the power of synthetic voice software and artificial intelligence. The shape of things to come in the radio world.
From here, there and everywhere, you've tuned to the Wireless Institute of Australia's National News Service. We are VK1WIA. Now, special interest group news with Cole, VK3GTV.
Hello, welcome to the segment. First up, it's Worldwide Special Interest Groups Summits on the Air, Worldwide Flora and Fauna Program, Parks on the Air, and other adventure groups. SOTA exhibitor stand at Ham Radio, Friedrichshafen. This item particularly for our European listeners of WIA National News, or perhaps we should rebrand ourselves, WIA World News. For the first time, SOTA has its own booth at Ham Radio this weekend, June 23 to 25. SOTA is short for Summits on the Air, and it's an award scheme for radio amateurs that encourages portable operation in mountainous areas. In addition to lots of general information about mountain radio, There's many useful hints and answers to questions about radio operation on summits, such as what is the right equipment. The meetup in Germany gives the opportunity to put faces to the friends that, up until now, we've only met on the radio. Worldwide Special Interest Group News, ATV, tinyurl.com/WIA-news-videos. That link is a video version of this news compiled by VK5BD Bevan. A tad fast to catch that? No problem. You can find the link on the WIA website or just search YouTube for VK5BD. Well worth a look. Sydney ATV Group. For the first time, 2 members of the group have successfully completed a 2-way narrowband digital TV contact across Sydney over a severely obstructed 18-kilometre path on 70 centimetres using DVB-S. Gary VK2CRJ transmitted a high-definition TV signal in 450 kHz bandwidth using a Lime Mini SDR and Raspberry Pi 3. Transmit power was 17 watts into a 12-element beam. John VK2ATU, using a UK-made DTX1, set to its lowest setting of 1 MHz bandwidth, running 30 watts standard definition into a 9 dB panel antenna. For comparison, standard broadcast TV using DVB-T modulation requires 7 MHz bandwidth. At amateur power levels, transmission ideally needs line of sight for reception. Being able to use reduced bandwidth to successfully make contacts over less favourable signal paths suggests further possibilities for experimentation. Worldwide Special Interest Group CW. Louis Benvenuto in the USA is a Morse code master. Lou, as most call him, said if you don't practice every day, you lose it. Well, Lou certainly hasn't lost it. At 106 years old, yes, you did hear right, at 106, Lou still got it. Growing up in Nebraska, he went to radio school in California where he became licensed as W6OTB. Well done, Lou. Worldwide Special Interest Group's Final Frontier. Spain's Urisat-1 collaborative satellite launched. The satellite is a joint effort between AMSAT EA, URI, the Spanish equivalent of the WIA, private companies and universities. One of the primary objectives of Urisat-1 is to serve as an FM voice and FSK data repeater. Equipped with slow-scan television, the satellite will transmit live images as well as stored images at regular intervals. It also features a chess game, enabling players here on the Green Planet to engage in a game against the satellite. Periodically, the satellite will transmit updates on the state of the game, including the chessboard, the last movement made, and whether the next move belongs to the players or the satellite. Uplink 145.975 MHz or 145.925 MHz auxiliary frequency. The downlink is 436.888 MHz. IARU coordinates Sapling Magnifica satellite. The Sapling Magnifica, developed by the Stanford Student Space Initiative, is a technology demonstration mission aimed to prove several key technologies necessary for SSI satellites to host specific payloads in the future. These include a magnetocore-based ADCS, a higher quality camera than on previous Sapling missions, and reaction wheels. Sapling Magnifica is an amateur radio mission that's entirely initiated and developed by undergraduate students, most of whom already have or are studying for their amateur radio license. NASA is worried that SpaceX's giant new Starship vehicle won't be ready to carry astronauts to the surface of the Moon in late 2025 as currently planned. In 2021, the agency selected Starship, the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built, to be the first crewed lunar lander for its Artemis program of moon exploration. Starship will put astronauts down near the ice-rich lunar South Pole on the Artemis 3 mission, in humanity's first return to the moon since the Apollo program ended in 1972. Artemis 3 is currently targeted to lift off in December 2025, but it's unlikely Starship will be able to meet that timeline, NASA officials said. Worldwide Special Interest Group's Lowdown. The Alexander Association preserves, documents and displays the unique Alexanderson alternator at the old radio station in Sweden. It's listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Station. Alexanderson Day will be celebrated on Sunday, July the 2nd. Using the call sign SAQ, the transmitter, which is almost 100 years old, is planned to be activated for 2 CW transmissions on 17.2 kHz. A half-wave antenna for this frequency is over 8,700 metres long, but you don't need to go to that extreme. A simple active antenna connected to the sound card of a computer is a common method to try and receive the transmissions and may be an interesting construction project to consider. Next up, it's Worldwide Special Interest Group's Radio Scouting. And with the latest, here's VK2APC. Alec.
Thanks, Cole. What a weekend it was on the 10th of June for Scouts to be radioactive. During the Greater Western Sydney Jamboree held at Cataract Scout Activity Centre, an activity around the world in 30 minutes was ran for the Scouts. This was an orienteering activity with a radio twist. The Scouts used a handheld radio to request grid references to navigate to the spot. Once at the reference, they radioed back a code on a container to see if they were at the right city. If they were able to stamp their passport and get another grid reference. This activity taught Scouts about grid referencing and proper radio etiquette in a fun environment. And in Yas, first Yas Scouts used the call sign VI100YSG to celebrate 100 years of first Yas Scouts while participating in the VK Shires event. They made plenty of contacts and talked to the amateurs to gain radio experience. First Yas Scouts sends a big thank you to all who took time to speak to the up-and-coming radio operators. Now over to the Honeysuckle Creek Campground in Namaji National Park. The Amaru Cub Scouts braved -4 overnight temperatures while camping there. At the former Space Communications site, the Cubs made contact with the first Yas Cub Scout group on 40 meters. This was the first time outside of Joda that the two Cub groups communicated via amateur radio. I'm Alec, VK2APC in Sydney. Now back over to you, Cole.
Thanks, Alec. On to Worldwide Special Interest Group's Rescue Radio. IARU Region 3, India. Learning from past experiences, Gujarat State Disaster Management Authority has deployed 6 ham radio teams, 2 of them in Kutch, and mobile units for seamless communication after Biparjoy hit the shore near Jakar port. The authority said it can communicate emergency requirements through ham radio, like the need for ambulances, or call disaster response teams when people require to be rescued. And that wraps up the segment for me for this week. Next week, Bruce, VK3FFF, far-flung fellow, returns from his travels, so I'll catch you in a fortnight. I'm Cole, VK3GTV.
Across Australia, from VK1 WIA, you're tuned to the WIA National News Service. In VK5, it can be heard on VK5 RSV 70 centimetres, VK5 RDF 70 centimetres, VK5 RSE 2 metres, and VK5 RBV 70 centimetres on the digital C4FM Adelaide 10G YSX and YSF node 69159. I'm Nathan Grundy, VK5 DAD.
2023 social scene. VK5 Adelaide Hills Amateur Radio Society's buy and sell at Marion RSL July 15. In VK4 it's Sunfest September 9 at Mountain Creek State School. Tasmania Alaramie 2023 November 4 and 5 in Hobart. Rosebud Radio Fest at the Eastbourne Primary School Sunday November 12 in VK3. Back to VK5 and Amateur Radio Experimenters Group Radio and Electronics Sale November 26. Now, let's move ahead to 2024 and fantastic news coming up. We now have in writing exactly where what is. I'd hate to steal WIA Secretary Peter Clee's thunder here, so we're going to leave it till next week when Peter will get along, but might I just say, stock up on that Bundy rum. Now till next we meet, I'm Graham, VK4BB. Walk softly.
This is VK1 WIA. All points of contacts from today's news stories are to be found in print when you read the web editions, www.wia.org.au.
This has been the Wireless Institute of Australia with the weekly news service. This broadcast is in text, audio and video and is accessed on wia.org.au.
Courtesy of Bevan, VK5 BD's ATV and YouTube channel, this has been WIA National News. We're back now, live and local, and your voice, your callbacks. And don't forget, tick like.
The X Factor is back as new regions rotate into Earth view from the sun's far side with big solar flares, big solar storms, and the promise of more. Those stories and more in the news this week. If you want to learn how weather from our star causes impacts at the Earth that shape the future of our world, join Professors Dr. Jenny Meehan, Michael Cook, and myself as we guide you through a space weather certificate program like no other. To enroll in the Space Weather and Environment Science program offered at Millersville University, go to millersville.edu/SWEN. It's weather for the 21st century. This forecast also sponsored in part by CW Ops. Right on cue, activity from our star picks up in a big way with new active regions rotating into Earth view and big solar flares to boot. But more about that in a minute. First, let's take a look at our Earth-facing disk. Back on the 17th and 18th, we had kind of a two-filament launch. First one launches to the north, and then a big snake-like filament slingshots its way off of the Earth-facing disk. It looks like the structure is going to go west of Earth mainly, but we might get a glancing blow. Probably not going to be that big of an impact, though. However, as we continue taking a look at the disk, look to the east limb. You can see a lot of activity going on. Well, that is region 3341, even before it rotated into Earth view. But once it did, it says hello in a big way. Bam! Right there on the 20th, it fires an X 1.1 class flare and a big solar storm. This caused an R3 level radio blackout on Earth's day side. And believe it or not only did it affect all of the amateur radio operators, but we had big radio bursts associated with it as well. In fact, as we take a look, we can actually see from Germany to Arecibo to Alaska, even at Owens Valley, California, we saw the big radio bursts. In fact, as we take a closer look at Owens Valley, you can see that radio burst goes up to 12 gigahertz, if not 14 gigahertz. Oh my goodness, this affects not only amateur radio operators, but satellites and space traffic as well. If you had issues with DirecTV or Sirius XM or GPS or even satellite phones, all of this can be affected when you have, even Starlink can be affected when you have radio bursts of this magnitude. And this is just the beginning for this particular active region. We do have about 9 days for this region to rotate completely off of the Earth-facing disk, so it's going to be with us for a while. Luckily, it looks like it's beginning to stabilize since that X-class flare. However, it is still a solar storm producer, so we're going to have to keep our eyes on it. Meanwhile, we do have a few other filaments and things that could be erupting at any moment, so we could get some Earth-directed storms here pretty quickly. And if you look to the east limb, there is another region that's going to be rotating into Earth view here over the next couple days that is also a big flare player and solar storm producer. So it looks like more is coming. So if you are an amateur radio operator and you're dealing with field day and things don't seem to be working right with your equipment, it may not be your rig, it may be the sun. Now, taking a look at the sun a little bit from the far side, this is stereo A, and it's looking at our sun just a tiny bit from the side. And as you take a look at the east limb in stereo's view, look down in the south and you can see region 3341 rotating into view on the 20th. Bam! Right there, that's when it fires that X 1.1 flare, and it launches a pretty massive solar storm that's going to be heading mainly towards stereo. However, it looks from the coronagraphs that we might actually get a slight glancing blow at Earth. It's kind of hard to tell. If that happens, it will be like maybe midday on the 23rd, possibly into the 24th. However, look up in the north. Look at on the 21st. Wham! Right there. Do you see that? That's another big solar storm launching approaching from that region in the north that hasn't rotated yet into view. This is another expected active region, and it's likely a big flare player as well as a solar storm producer. So what this means is that in the coming week, we could be having big chances for big solar storms from two big flare players, as well as lots of radio blackouts, and that's likely going to continue in through this upcoming week and possibly into next before things calm down. Switching to our moon, we are now coming out of the new moon phase on our way to a first quarter, and by the 27th, the moon will be about 62% illuminated. So, night sky watchers, if you want to catch those dim objects in the sky, well, you're going to have this bright companion, so you're going to need to check your local rise and set times. Switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are still under the influence of that fast solar wind from those coronal holes that have been moving through the Earth's strike zone, but the influence is finally beginning to wane. On top of that, we do have a couple sideswiping solar storms, one that should be sideswiping us about now, and another one that should be sideswiping us within about the 23rd or the 24th. So conditions are going to be a little bit strange. At high latitudes, NOAA's expecting active conditions, but they are giving us about a 50% chance of a major storm. And this is going to be, waning as we get through the 24th into the 25th. But remember, because we have so many filament potential eruptions on the Earth-facing disk, these conditions could change very, very quickly. Now, at mid-latitudes, we're not expecting nearly so much. We're only expecting unsettled conditions, but we do have up to about a 15% chance of a minor storm. Again, around the 23rd, possibly into the 24th, but by the 25th, things should settle back down. But remember, again, aurora photographers, there's a lot of potential for big Earth-directed solar storms on the disk this week. So these conditions could easily change very, very quickly. Switching to our solar flare and dayside radio blackout outlook over the coming week, we do have a lot of active regions in Earth view, including region 3341 that fired that big X-class flare just the other day. But this is managing to boost that solar flux. We're up into the 170s right now. We could be into the 180s over the next couple days and possibly into the 190s by the end of the week when the new regions begin to rotate into Earth view. However, this is causing a lot of noise on the bands. We're sitting at the moderate noise level for the day side right now on the radio bands. NOAA's giving us about a 40% chance of M-class flares at the R1 to R2 level radio blackout. This could easily last over the next 3 days and possibly the rest of the week, including through the weekend. So amateur radio operators for field day, you're going to be dealing with these big radio blackouts. Sadly, we also have about a 10% chance of an R3 level radio blackout. That's the X-class flares. And that's also going to last throughout this week. And these risks may rise just a little bit as we get a better look at the new region that's going to be rotating into Earth view. So again, field day participants, you're going to have to just hang in there and possibly work the bands at night if the noise on the bands during the day is just too much. Switching to our radiation storm and polar aviation outlook over the coming week, everything is in the green this week. We are sitting at the D1 normal range for aviators, which is the same as the S0 quiet levels. In fact, NOAA's only giving us about a 5% chance of a radiation storm over the next 3 days. And as the week progresses, we might see that rise just a little bit because we have some new regions rotating into Earth view and some old regions rotating to the west limb. But for the most part, you frequent flyers and aircrew, it looks like everything is in the green, but just be sure to check those ICAO advisories for any changes. So our sun kicks up the space weather activity by a bunch this week. We have region 3341 that we're keeping our eyes on. It's already fired an X-class flare, and now it's fired a near M5 flare. So radio blackouts are definitely a thing that's going to continue. So amateur radio operators, I know you've got field day weekend. Well, you're going to be having to deal with these radio blackouts as well. So work through them as best as you can. Now, aurora photographers, well, we actually have multiple solar storms that are going to be grazing Earth. We had one that grazed us to the west. Now we've got one that's going to graze us to the east on the 24th, and now another one that's going to be grazing us likely to the south sometime early next week. But Nothing is totally Earth-directed yet, but that could very well change. Region 3341 has got maybe another day or two before it rotates into the Earth strike zone, and then if it lets loose, it will definitely be an Earth-directed solar storm, so we could get some decent aurora. So just keep your batteries charged and keep your fingers crossed that we could get a good show. And now you GPS users, well, you know, things are okay. On the day side, you're kind of dealing with these radio blackouts, which makes dawn and dusk awfully tough to get decent GPS reception. But Earth's night side's not too bad right now because we don't have any big solar storms that are causing a lot of aurora, just at high latitudes. So as long as you stay away from dawn and dusk and away from aurora at high latitudes, your GPS reception should be pretty decent. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.
I'm on the St Kilda foreshore at the site of this, the solar system scale model, representing the entirety of the solar system at a 1 to 1 billion scale ratio.
The biggest object in the solar system and our model is the Sun. Now it's 1.39 million kilometres across, which ends up being 1.39 metres across. And it turns out it actually is hot to touch. Now that's not a design feature, it just happens to be made out of metal and sitting in the hot itself.
Let's go and explore some planets.
So we farewell the Sun and start our journey through the solar system and down the St Kilda beach. Now this is a fantastic spot for this model. It's both lovely to be at and attracts a lot of people.
So just 58 metres or 58 million kilometres away from the Sun is Mercury, and it's tiny. You can see already the vast differences in size between the Sun and the first planet.
And the spacing of all of the planets is also to scale, and the distance between our next stop and the first is similar.
And the next planet is Venus, one of Earth's neighbours.
This project was built as a collaboration between art and science and shows in a real tangible way the vastness of the solar system. Although you can see for these smaller planets there's not a lot of space for detail and room for artistic flair.
And next up, this is home. This is planet Earth.
And Earth is the only planet that has its moon included in the model. And what this model really shows is the vast differences between the size of the objects and the distances between them. It really is called space for a reason. Next up is a journey that humans might be taking soon.
And that brings us to our neighbour. This is Mars. So that's the 4 inner planets. From here things get a lot further, so I'm going to grab some transport and do it that way.
And visiting this model can be done as a lovely walk or ride, or in my case, scoot. And the model was originally installed in 2005 as a temporary exhibition, and it had such a positive response that it was made into a permanent feature by the council.
And this is Jupiter, the biggest of the planets, and you can see a lot more of the detail on it. I'm sure the artists appreciated the ability to do that.
From Jupiter, we continue our journey north and through the beach-going crowd, who I can only assume are just like me and here for the science education. Now from here we pass the 1 kilometre from our starting point, which represents 1 billion kilometres from the Sun.
Then we have Saturn, one of the gas giants and probably one of the most distinctive of all the planets. So we've gone from the Sun here to Saturn, and the distances get a lot further from here.
And the designers did a great job engaging the Astronomical Society of Victoria and got a series of facts and information on each of the plaques, which is what I would read and say to the camera, implying they knew a lot more about the planets than I actually did.
And as we get further out, we get to Uranus, one of the bigger planets with around 30 moons, and it's orientated differently than the other planets.
In addition to the Port Phillip Council, this project was funded by the Planet Wheeler Foundation, who are the folks behind the Lonely Planet guidebook company, who helped turn this project from the papier-mâché original models into these permanent displays.
And then we have Neptune, one of the distant gas giants, and it kind of feels right that it's located right near the sea.
But I know what you're really wondering. Do they have Pluto? Or did they install a Pluto and then have to take it down when it was kicked out of the Planet Club? What is the protocol for models when science makes categorization changes? Well, I had to make one of the longer trips of around 1.4 kilometers to find out.
Okay, I've just arrived at the final spot and it's Pluto, and this is the cutest thing I think I've ever seen. This is the tiny little display, and look how little it is. I reckon this might be one of the smallest statues of anything in the world. It is so cute and so little, and it feels right for something which was once a planet and is no longer. Thank you, Pluto.
But it turns out that's not the end. This model had one more surprise, going beyond the 0.24 centimetre long Pluto to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri.
Proxima Centauri is around 4.2 light years away. That is 40 trillion kilometres. But what they've done as part of this model is still kept it to scale. Now you might be asking, how is that possible? Well, in reality, it would be 40,000 kilometres from here. But it turns out that's the same distance as the circumference of the Earth. So it's in the right spot, but to get here, you have to do a lap of the globe. And that's the solar system. If you enjoyed that, you can come to St Kilda and check it out for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. There's a lot more cool stuff coming up. That's it from me.